I want you to picture this. 64 years old, standing in the rain outside the house I paid the down payment on, while my own son tells me I never provided for this family. Stick with me to the end. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. My name is Sebastian Morris. 3 weeks ago, I was sleeping in a Motel 6 off I-70 outside Denver, Colorado, and the man who put me there was my own boy. I built Morris Freight from a single used truck in 1994, 30 years hauling loads across 6 states, missing birthdays, missing Christmas mornings, so my son Jacob could go to college without loans. I never asked him for a thank you. I just wanted him to have it easier than I did. Then, diesel prices spiked, 2 of my drivers wrecked rigs in the same winter, and the insurance company found a clause to wiggle out of covering the second one. I was carrying a judgment I couldn't touch. The bank took the trucks, then they took the house. I called Jacob on a Tuesday, told him I needed somewhere to stay for a couple weeks, just until I sorted out disability paperwork and found a room I could afford on what was left. He said, "Come by Sunday, we'll figure it out." I got there Sunday with 1 duffel bag and 40 years of pride folded up small enough to fit in my chest pocket. Jacob opened the door in a golf polo, looking past me like he was checking if the neighbors were watching. His wife Victoria stood behind him, arms crossed, in a kitchen that smelled like it cost more to renovate than my first truck. "Dad?" He didn't hug me. "This isn't really a good time." "You said Sunday." I know what I said. He rubbed his jaw the way he does when he's rehearsed something. "Look, I've been thinking about this all week, and I gotta be honest with you. You had 35 years to build something that lasted. 1 bad year and it's all gone? That tells me something, Dad. That tells me maybe this was always going to happen." I stood there in the doorway with rain coming sideways off the porch roof, and I let that sink in. My own son telling me my whole life's work was a slow-motion failure I should have seen coming. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking for a couch for 2 weeks. Victoria stepped up beside him. "Sebastian, we love you, but Jacob has a career to protect. Image matters at his level. Having his father show up broke, it doesn't exactly say stability to the partners at his firm." I looked at my son's face, waiting for him to tell her that was a hell of a thing to say to a man standing in the rain. He looked at his shoes instead. "There's a Motel 6 by the interstate. I can spot you 2 nights. 2 nights for a man who spotted him 4 years of tuition. "I raised you better than this," I said, and my voice cracked on the word raised, which I hated, because I didn't want to give either of them the satisfaction. Jacob's jaw tightened. "Don't do that. Don't make this about how you raised me. Maybe if you'd built something that actually lasted, I wouldn't have to have this conversation right now. You put this on yourself, Dad." That was the moment something in my chest went quiet and cold. Not broken, just done. I took the $60 he handed me at the door like he was tipping a valet, and I walked back to my truck, the one vehicle the bank hadn't gotten to yet, only because it wasn't worth their time. I drove to the Motel 6 off I-70 and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The room smelled like bleach and cigarettes somebody had smoked 10 years before the no smoking sign went up. I had $340 to my name. I did the math in my head about how many nights that bought me, and it wasn't many. Around 11, my phone rang. Number I didn't know. Colorado area code, but not one I recognized. "Mr. Morris?" A woman's voice, clipped and professional. "I'm calling on behalf of Harrison Whitfield." I almost hung up. I figured it was a collections call dressed up polite. "I don't know a Harrison Whitfield," I said. "He knows you, Mr. Morris, or knew of you until recently." A pause, papers shifting on her end. "Mr. Whitfield is very ill. He's asked to meet with you tomorrow. It concerns something that happened on Route 9 outside Silverton 11 years ago." My stomach dropped through the floor of that motel room. Route 9, Silverton. I hadn't said those words out loud in over a decade. "How do you know about that?" I said, and it wasn't really a question. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, she said, like she hadn't heard me at all. "Mr. Whitfield has much less time left, Mr. Morris, and he was very specific that this conversation happened face to face." She hung up before I could ask another question. I sat on the edge of that motel bed with the phone still in my hand, rain hammering the window, and for the first time since Jacob shut that door in my face, I wasn't thinking about the money I didn't have. I was thinking about a stretch of black ice on a mountain road 11 years ago, and a car I pulled out of a ravine that I'd spent every year since trying to forget. Somebody remembered, and tomorrow I was going to find out why.
The address Lucy Elliott sent me sat 40 minutes outside Denver, up in the foothills near Evergreen, Colorado. Not Silverton itself, that was just the name of the road where it all happened. The house was set back behind a stone gate, the kind of place where the driveway alone was longer than the block I grew up on. I parked my beat-up truck next to a car I couldn't even name, something German and low to the ground, and I felt every one of my 64 years walking up to that front door in my one good jacket. Lucy Elliott met me before I even knocked. Tall, sharp-eyed, a folder tucked under her arm like she'd been expecting me down to the minute. "Mr. Morris, thank you for coming." She didn't offer a hand. "Mr. Whitfield is in the study. I should tell you he tires quickly. Please don't be alarmed by his appearance. Nothing prepares you for that kind of warning." Harrison Whitfield sat behind a desk the size of my old kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket despite the room being warm, oxygen tubing running under his nose. He was maybe 70, though the illness had aged him past that, but his eyes tracked me across the room sharp as a man half his age. "Sebastian Morse," he said, and something in his voice cracked with what I'd swear was relief. "Sit down. I've been waiting 11 years to say thank you." I sat. For what, exactly? March, 11 years ago. Route 9, the switchback above Silverton. Black ice. A car went through the guardrail into the ravine. Watched my face. That was my daughter's car. I was in it. The room tilted a little. I remembered that night the way you remember a nightmare, in pieces, out of order. The screech of metal, climbing down through snow up to my knees, a man trapped upside down, gasoline leaking, engine ticking as it cooled. "You were the trucker," Harrison said, "the one who stopped when 3 other cars didn't. You cut me out of that seatbelt with a box cutter from your glove compartment. You carried me 200 yards up an embankment in the snow with a broken collarbone, yours, not mine, and you never told anyone your name. I gave a statement to the state patrol. I figured that was enough. You disappeared before the ambulance loaded me in. Do you know how hard it is to track down a good Samaritan who doesn't want to be found?" He almost laughed, but it turned into a cough that took a full minute to pass. Lucy stepped forward with water. He waved her off. "It took my lawyers 3 years and a small fortune. By the time they found your name on the police report, I'd already built half my company on the second chance you gave me." "What company?" I asked, though some part of me already knew this wasn't a small conversation. "Whitfield Regional Bank, 14 branches across 3 states. He said it flat, no pride in it, like a fact that stopped meaning much to him. "I was 38 years old and drunk on my own bad decisions when that car went off the road, Mr. Morris. My daughter was driving because I was too far gone to. I've spent 11 years sober, 11 years trying to be a man worth the life you handed me back to me." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. "I'm dying," Harrison said. "No drama in it. Liver failure, unrelated to the drinking, which is either irony or God having a laugh at my expense. Doctors give me 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I behave." He pulled a folder across the desk, same as the one Lucy carried in.
I've spent the last 4 months rewriting my will. You're the reason I'm alive to have grandchildren. You're the reason I got sober. I am not leaving this world without settling that debt. I pushed the folder back an inch without opening it. I didn't pull you out of that car for a payout, Harrison. I did it because you were a person trapped in a wreck. Anybody would have stopped. 3 cars didn't. His voice went hard. I know exactly what kind of man stops on a mountain road in a snowstorm for a stranger. I've spent 11 years looking, and you're the only one I've found. He opened the folder himself, since I wouldn't. Bank statements, deeds, numbers with more zeros than I could track sitting there in that chair. Harrison, I can't accept. You already have. Legally, as of 9 days ago when I signed it. He said it simple, final. A man who'd made peace with being disobeyed on this one point. I have a son, Thomas, who calls twice a year, both times to ask what's coming to him. I don't need you to want it, Mr. Morris. I need you to take it, because you're the only person in my life who never asked me for a single thing. I sat there in that warm study with a dying stranger telling me I was about to inherit more money than I could count. 3 weeks after my own son handed me $60 at his front door, like I was a stranger asking for spare change. There's something else, Harrison said, and his voice dropped, careful now. Lucy did some research on you before I called. Standard background check for anyone entering an estate like this. He glanced at her. She didn't look away from me. I know about the business. I know about the house. And I know about 3 weeks ago, at your son's front door. My whole body went cold. How do you know about that? Money finds things, Mr. Morris. It's one of the few things it's reliably good at. Harrison leaned forward, and for a dying man, his eyes were steady as stone. Before you decide anything about this inheritance, there's a recording I think you need to hear. Lucy pulled it from a mutual contact 3 days ago. It's your son talking to his wife. Lucy set a small recorder on the desk between us, like it was something dangerous. I need you to listen to this before you say anything else, because I don't think you know what your son really said about you after he closed that door.
Lucy pressed play, and for a second all I heard was static and the hum of a car engine. Then Jacob's voice came through, clear enough that my stomach dropped before he'd even finished his first sentence. No, I gave him money for the motel, Victoria. What more do you want from me? Victoria's voice, tight and irritated. I want you to stop feeling guilty about it. You did more than most people would. He looked bad, though, really bad, standing there in the rain like that. Jacob. A pause, the sound of her adjusting in her seat. Your father made his choices, running that trucking company into the ground, refusing to sell it off when he had the chance, refusing to listen to anybody who told him diesel prices were going to eat him alive. That's not bad luck, Jacob. That's stubbornness. And now you want to inherit his stubbornness as your problem? I gripped the arm of the chair hard enough that my knuckles went white. He's still my dad. And you're still allowed to have boundaries. Healthy families have boundaries. What did your therapist call it? Enabling. You'd be enabling him. Jacob exhaled, long and tired, like he was the one being wronged. You're right. The way he looked at me, like I was the one who let him down. That's manipulation, Jacob. Guilt is a tool people like that use when they can't provide for themselves anymore. Don't let him make you feel like his failure is your responsibility. Lucy clicked the recorder off. I sat there in that warm study with the sound of my own son calling me stubborn, calling my life's work a failure I earned, and I felt something in my chest that wasn't sadness anymore. It had curdled into something else. There's more, Harrison said, quiet. From 2 days ago, after word started getting around that I'd changed my will. I looked up sharp. Nobody knew about this 2 days ago. I didn't even know 2 days ago. Small towns talk, Mr. Morris, and my staff isn't as discreet as I pay them to be. Somebody mentioned it to somebody who knew your daughter-in-law's sister. Harrison nodded to Lucy. She played the second file. This one was shorter, Victoria's voice, breathless with something that sounded almost like excitement.
If it's true, Jacob, we need to fix this. We need to fix this now before he gets some lawyer involved and cuts us out entirely. Fix what? We haven't talked to him in 3 weeks. Exactly. That's the problem. You call him tomorrow, you apologize. You tell him you've been under a lot of stress, that you didn't mean what you said, that of course he can stay with us as long as he needs. You want him to move in? I want him to feel forgiven, Jacob. I want him to feel like family again. People don't cut family out of a will. They cut out the people who abandoned them. A pause, calculating. This could set us up for the rest of our lives. We are not losing this because you couldn't manage one apology phone call. I sat back in that chair like I'd been struck. 3 weeks ago, I was a burden standing in the rain, a cautionary tale about stubbornness and bad decisions. Now, because of a rumor about money neither of them had confirmed yet, I was worth an apology phone call. He doesn't know yet, I said slowly. About the will, about any of it. No. Which means whatever call you get from him in the next few days will tell you exactly what you need to know about whether that apology is real or whether it's an investment. I thought about Jacob as a boy, riding on my shoulders at truck shows, telling everyone his dad drove the biggest rig in 3 counties. I thought about the man at that door 3 weeks ago, telling me I'd earned my own collapse. Why are you showing me all this? I asked Harrison. You could have just handed me the paperwork and let me find out on my own. Harrison's oxygen machine hissed quietly between us. Because in 6 weeks, I'll be dead, and you'll have more money than you'll know what to do with. And every single person in your life is about to find that out. I needed you to walk into that with your eyes open, Mr. Morris. I needed you to know exactly who's been standing beside you honestly, before the money makes it impossible to tell. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen. Jacob. I looked up at Harrison. He didn't say anything, just watched me with those steady, dying eyes, waiting to see what I'd do. I let it ring twice more before I answered. Dad? Jacob's voice came through, warm in a way it hadn't been in 3 weeks. Warmer than it had been in over a year. Warmer than it had been in over a year. Hey, I've been thinking about you all week. I feel terrible about how things went. Can we talk? Can I take you to dinner tomorrow night? I looked at Harrison Whitfield, dying in his chair, and at Lucy Elliott standing silent by the window, and I understood exactly what kind of test had just started. Sure, son, I said, keeping my voice even. Dinner sounds good. I hung up, and the room went quiet, except for the hiss of the oxygen machine. He doesn't know I know, I said. Harrison nodded slowly. Then I suggest you go to that dinner, Mr. Morris, and find out exactly how far they're willing to go. Jacob and Victoria's house looked different than it had 3 weeks ago, when I stood in the rain on that same porch getting told I'd earned my own downfall. The porch light was on now. Somebody had swept the steps. Victoria opened the door this time, and she hugged me like we hadn't spoken in years, by choice, rather than by her own arms crossed and her mouth full of excuses. Sebastian, she said my name warm like honey. We're so glad you came. Come in, it's freezing out there. The house smelled like a real dinner, not takeout containers pushed into a trash can before company arrives. Candles on the table. The good plates, the ones I remembered from their wedding registry, the ones that never came out for ordinary Tuesdays. Jacob met me in the hallway and pulled me into a hug that lasted a beat too long, like he was performing it for an audience only he could see. Dad, I'm glad you came. He pulled back, studied my face. I've been sick about how I talked to you. I said things I didn't mean. You said I earned it, I reminded him, quiet, watching his eyes. Said it was my own stubbornness. Something flickered behind his face, there and gone. I was stressed. Work's been insane. I wasn't in my right mind. He guided me toward the dining room, hand on my shoulder, like we were close, like 3 weeks hadn't happened at all. That's not who I am, Dad. You know that. We sat. Victoria served a roast that must have taken all afternoon, poured wine into glasses that actually matched. So, Victoria said,
halfway through the meal, trying so hard to sound casual it came out brittle instead. "We heard something interesting around town, something about Harrison Whitfield." There it was. "What'd you hear?" I asked, cutting my meat, not looking up. Jacob and Victoria traded a glance. "Just that, well, people are saying he changed his will recently, left everything to some trucker who saved his life years ago." Jacob laughed, too light, too rehearsed. "Small world, huh? You used to drive trucks all through those mountains." "Small world," I agreed. "Was it you, Dad?" Jacob asked, and his voice cracked on it. Hope and greed tangled together so tight he couldn't separate them even if he'd wanted to. I set my fork down.
11 years ago, yeah. I pulled a man out of a wreck near Silverton. Never told anybody. Didn't seem like it needed telling. Victoria's hand found Jacob's under the table, gripping it. "Sebastian, that's incredible. That's such a beautiful thing you did." "Beautiful," I repeated. "So it's true," Jacob said, leaning forward now, all pretense of casual gone. Dad, you're the one inheriting the Whitfield estate." I looked at my son's face, lit up gold by candlelight, hungrier than I'd ever seen him, and I thought about the recording. Guilt is a tool people like that use. I thought about Victoria's voice, calculating, cold. This could set us up for the rest of our lives. "I am," I said simply. The table went electric. Victoria's eyes filled, actual tears, and I couldn't tell anymore if she'd trained herself to produce them on command or if some part of her actually believed her own performance. "Dad, I am so sorry," Jacob said, reaching for my hand across the table. "That wasn't me. That was stress talking. That was fear talking. You know how much I love you. You know family means everything to me." "Family means everything," I repeated back to him. "We want you to move in with us, Sebastian," suddenly Victoria said, gripping my other hand now, boxing me in between the two of them. "Properly this time. We'll clear out the guest room, really make it yours. You shouldn't be alone right now, not with everything you're going through." "Everything I'm going through," I said. "You mean the money." "No, I mean," Victoria faltered for the first time all evening. 3 weeks ago," I said, keeping my voice level, "I stood on your porch in the rain, and you told me having me around wasn't good for Jacob's image at the firm. You told me family meant boundaries. You called it enabling to help me." Jacob's face went pale. "Dad, we didn't mean it like that." "You meant every word." I reached into my jacket pocket, and I set Lucy's recorder on the table between the wine glasses, right next to the roast Victoria had spent all afternoon on. "Your father made his choices, Jacob, running that trucking company into the ground. That's not bad luck, that's stubbornness. Should I keep going? I've got the rest of it memorized." The color drained clean out of both their faces. "How do you have that?" Victoria whispered. "Same way I know about the phone call 2 days ago. If it's true, Jacob, we need to fix this before he gets some lawyer involved and cuts us out entirely." I looked at my son. "People don't cut family out of a will. They cut out the people who abandon them. That's what she said, Jacob, word for word." Jacob's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. "I'm not angry," I said, and it was mostly true. I just needed to know, and now I know. I stood up from the table, leaving the wine untouched, the roast half-eaten. "Dad, wait!" Jacob was on his feet too, panic cracking through the calculation now. "Please don't do this. We can fix this. Tell me what to do to fix this." I stopped at the door, my hand on the frame, the same frame I'd stood outside of 3 weeks ago, with a duffel bag and 40 years of pride folded up small. "There's one thing I need to know before I leave, and I need you to answer it honestly because it's the last honest thing I'll ever ask of you." Jacob's face was wrecked, somewhere between grief and desperation. "Anything." When Harrison's lawyers made this public, and they will, it's a matter of public record, how long before you'd have called if there'd been no money at all? Neither of them answered. That's what I thought, and I walked out into the cold, leaving the door open behind me, the porch light throwing my shadow long across their perfect lawn. Behind me, I heard Victoria's voice break into something sharp and furious, already turning on Jacob before I'd even reached my truck. Whatever they said to each other after that, I never found out. I didn't need to. What I didn't know yet, walking to that truck, was that Harrison Whitfield had left one more envelope with Lucy Elliott, one meant to be opened only after his children, Richard and Amanda, contested the will, and what was in it was about to change everything I thought I understood about that night on Route 9.
Harrison Whitfield died 9 days after that dinner, in his sleep, in the same study where he told me about Route 9. Lucy called me at 6 in the morning, and I drove out to Evergreen, Colorado one last time, the sun barely up over the foothills, frost still thick on the windshield. The funeral was small, private, the way he'd wanted it. I stood at the back. His son Richard and daughter Amanda sat up front in black, and neither one of them cried that I could see. Richard kept checking his phone. Amanda kept glancing sideways at the other mourners, gauging who was watching her grief. 2 weeks later, the estate reading happened in a law office downtown. Glass and steel, 40 floors up, the kind of view that makes ordinary people feel small on purpose. Lucy sat beside the attorney. Richard and Amanda sat across the table from me, close enough to touch, looking at me like I was something that had crawled out of the ground to steal from them. The estate, the attorney read, flat and careful, totaling approximately $210 million in liquid assets, real property, and controlling interest in Whitfield Regional Bank, is left in its entirety to Sebastian Morris. Richard's chair scraped back so hard it nearly tipped. This is insane. Our father gives away everything to a truck driver he met 11 years ago for 20 minutes on a mountain road? He wasn't there for 20 minutes, I said quietly. He was there because I stayed. This won't hold up, Amanda snapped. He was on painkillers. He was dying. There's no way he was of sound mind. Lucy slid a folder across the table without a word. Medical evaluations, 3 separate doctors, all dated within the final month, all confirming full mental competency. Amanda's mouth clamped shut. That's when the attorney set down one more envelope, sealed, my name written across it in Harrison's shaking hand. Mr. Whitfield asked that this be read only if his children contested the will, in this room in front of everyone present. Richard had just said the word lawsuit, so the attorney opened it. Richard, Amanda, if you're hearing this, you've done exactly what I feared you would. I want you to understand something before you spend money you don't have fighting money that was never going to be yours. 11 years ago on Route 9, I wasn't alone in that car. Your mother was driving. I made her drive because I was too drunk to. When we went through that guardrail, Sebastian Morris pulled both of us out. Your mother lived 4 more years after that night, and in every one of them I never told her I knew it was my fault. I let her carry that. The room had gone dead silent. Richard's face had drained white. I have spent 11 years sober because of what that man did on that mountain, and I have spent every day since trying to be worth the 2 lives he saved that night. You have spent those same 11 years asking me for money and waiting for me to die. I don't say that with anger anymore. I say it because it's the truth, and you deserve to hear it plainly, the way Sebastian Morris always spoke to me, without flattery, without an angle. The money isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. Look at what you're fighting for, and ask yourselves honestly whether you'd have fought half as hard for me while I was alive. Amanda was crying now, but I couldn't tell if it was grief or fury, and I don't think she could either. Richard didn't say anything at all. He just stared at the table like it might rearrange itself into different words if he looked long enough.
Neither of 'em contested it after that. The lawyers told me later that fighting a documented, witnessed, medically verified will would have cost more than what they stood to gain, and worse, it would have dragged their mother's name through every courtroom and newspaper in the state. Some kinds of pride even greed can't buy back. Jacob called 4 times that week. I let 3 go to voicemail. The 4th I answered, because some part of me needed to hear it said out loud one more time so I'd never wonder. "Dad, please, I know I messed up. Just give me a chance to make it right. We're family." "I told you you earned your own collapse," I said quietly. "Standing in the rain, you told me that. Then 2 days after you heard about the money, you were rehearsing an apology with your wife like it was a business pitch. I heard the recording, both of them." Silence on the line, long enough that I thought he'd hung up. "So that's it," he finally said, voice cracking. "Money means more to you than your own son?" I almost laughed, except nothing of it was funny. "No," I said, "it means I finally understand the difference between someone who loves me and someone who loves what I might be worth. Took me 64 years and a stranger from a snowbank to learn it. I'm not angry anymore, son. I'm just done." I hung up before he could answer, and I haven't picked up since. 6 months later, I'm sitting on a porch outside Durango, Colorado, in a house I bought outright. No bank, no debt, nobody who can knock on my door and take it from me. I kept Whitfield Regional Bank running under people who actually knew what they were doing. I put money into a scholarship fund for kids of long-haul truckers, the ones who grow up watching their fathers disappear for weeks at a stretch, building somebody else's dream 1 mile marker at a time. I don't talk to Jacob. I heard through a cousin that he and Victoria are still in that house, still underwater on the mortgage, still telling anyone who listened that I abandoned them out of spite. Let 'em tell it that way. I know what happened. I was there for every word of it, twice over. Once in the room and once on a recording that never lied to me like people did. Some nights I think about Harrison Whitfield, dying in that study, spending his last good weeks making sure I understood exactly who I could trust before the money made it impossible to tell honestly. That was the real inheritance. Not the house, not the bank, not the number with all those zeros. It was knowing, finally, without a shadow of doubt, who actually showed up for me, and who only showed up for what I was worth.